In the last video, we saw how the force of friction depends on the weight of an object. However, if an object is experiencing a force, the change in the momentum of the object depends on more than just what the strength of that force is. It also depends on the amount of time that the force is acting. There's a neat trick that we can demonstrate in order to see this effect in action. It's called the tablecloth trick. You may have seen it demonstrated before. The idea is that if you have a table with a tablecloth on it and a bunch of stuff on top of the tablecloth, like dishes and so forth, if you're able to pull the tablecloth out from under the objects fast enough, they won't fall over. They'll just end up sitting on the table. I don't have a tablecloth, but we can see that effect in action here. What's going to happen if I pull this paper slowly? Well, it probably doesn't surprise you that if I do that, the weight is just going to come along with it. But why does this happen? It happens because there's a frictional force between the paper and the weight itself. When I pull on the paper, the friction force pulls the weight along with it. What happens if I pull this paper a little faster, but still not super rapidly? The weight fell to the ground. Why? It's not just that the frictional force was acting on the weight. It's that the frictional force was acting on the weight for a long enough time that the weight gained enough momentum to fall off the table. However, one interesting fact is that the frictional force between the paper and the weight does not depend on how long the paper and the weight are in contact. It only depends on how heavy this weight is. So what if we pull the paper out super quickly? Well, if we pull the paper out super quickly, then the time that the force is acting between the paper and the weight will be less, and the impulse that the paper provides to the weight will be less. Less impulse means less change in momentum, and a smaller change in momentum means the weight will not move as far. Let's see if we can pull this paper out fast enough such that the weight stays exactly where it is. Notice the weight did wiggle ever so slightly. The paper did apply a force onto the weight, but it didn't do it for very long, and so the impulse was not very much, and the weight more or less stayed where it is.